This is a landscape that I made to show you guys how you might approach painting a landscape with the materials that you have from Calca. I made this really quickly, and I could do a lot better if I had more time, but hopefully it's good enough just to teach you a few basic things. If you have access to my live lessons, you can see the beginning stages of this, where I take it from a drawing that I sketched out based on a photograph that I've taken during one of my travels. And that's the live lesson from January the 11th, if you want to go back and see that beginning stage. One of the most important things that you're going to need to learn how to do if you want to paint a landscape is how to mix a natural looking green. Now notice that the green that comes out of our paint is way too bright and vivid to be a green that we would find in nature. And even when we feel like the grass looks so green and the trees are so green, they're never as green as that green that comes right out from the paint tube or the paint can. So we're going to want to mix it. Now, one thing you can do is mix some yellow. A lot of times it's a good thing to mix a little bit of yellow and get a more of a yellow green to start with. But believe it or not, the secret to mixing a naturalistic green is actually a little bit of red. Red is the complementary color of green. That means it exists on the opposite side of the color wheel. Mixing two complements together will result in making those colors dull. Dull is not always bad in the context of painting, especially when we're painting in a naturalistic style. Duller colors are often what we need. We could also just call them toned down. Now this particular green needs to be a little bit lighter for what I want, so I'm going to add some white. White also makes a color duller. Both white and black serve to tone a color down. Basically, we're adding any gray. You could think of white and black as just the two most extreme forms of gray. And anytime you add gray, you're dulling a color down. Now I want to paint this valley that's pretty far off in the distance, in the middle ground of the painting. And so I actually want it to be both lighter and duller, because as things get farther away from us, they get both lighter and less intense, less saturated. That means that the brighter colors are less bright than they would be if they were up close to us. So the first thing that I'm doing here is just lightening up that middle ground so that it stands out from the foreground. Foreground is the part of the landscape that's closest to us, the part that you could walk into, and then the middle ground could be a few miles away. It depends on how wide is the scenery, how wide is the view. And for this painting, the foreground is that dark green line of bushes. So everything in front of that dark green line is the foreground, and then the middle ground is all that lighter green that's between the dark bushes and the first lower range of mountains in the distance. Now speaking of the foreground, I have to block in the rest of these bushes. Some of them are a little, different shades of green. Maybe some of them are a little closer to sort of a brownish, reddish color. So I'm just putting them in, just trying to differentiate them. In reality, they all look a little different than what I'm putting in here. I'm just trying to move quickly. Now you may notice that I'm painting the mountains to be more blue. Now I'm lightening them up again because I felt like they didn't have enough of that airy feeling. Mountains in the distance are very airy. You see a lot of literally air between you and the mountains that tints them a kind of a blue color. And you'll notice that each row of mountains gets lighter as it goes towards the sky, and some of them even fade into the sky a little bit. Now speaking of the sky, I'm gonna lighten up the clouds. I'm putting pure white in there, but I'm gonna mix it soon to get to, you know, it shouldn't be, even though we know clouds are white, they're not that white. They're not the pure white of the paint. So this is just because my sky got a little too gray, a little too dark, so I'm just gonna lighten it up. The bottom of the sky is always lighter than the top of the sky. So as the sky moves from the horizon towards the higher part, it becomes a deeper blue. Even that highest part in the cloud conditions that we have in this painting, it probably is not like, you know, it's nowhere near the blue that comes out of your paint can. Well, anyway, I really enjoy playing around with that light, airy feeling in those distant mountains, and so I'll oftentimes mix a lot of the same color that I'm using in the sky and clouds directly into the wet paint that I'm using on the mountains themselves, so that they have more of a color relationship and a value relationship. Well, that second row of mountains got a little too light, so I'm going to darken it a little bit now. And of course, now it's going to be too dark, so I'll have to go back in and lighten it up again, tone it down, tone it up with the light. But just make sure that it's desaturated and light enough to feel like it's in the right distance in comparison with the middle ground and the foreground. And now I'm gonna put some trees, little lines of distant trees that are kind of intersecting this valley. In reality, they're probably a little less saturated, maybe a little lighter than what I put in, but that's okay. Time to move on to the foreground now. Start darkening this layer of bushes and really trying to get a sense of separation of the foreground from that middle ground and background. So I'm doing that by making it a lot darker so that it really stands out against that lighter middle ground and background, and you really get the sense that this is a different layer. This is a layer of space that's closer to us. It's only in this closest layer where you'll actually get true black in the shadows, or something approaching true black. All the shadows that are in the middle ground are too far away for them to be that dark. The same goes for the lightest lights. So like in this bush where I've got the lightest lights, that's also, you know, the lights get lighter and the darks get darker the closer the objects get to us. If you keep that in mind, you'll always be able to make a convincing sense of space in your paintings. Well, like I said, I could do better if I had more time, but I'm going to leave it off here for now. And I wish you all a happy painting. Can't wait to see what you make.